I got into UCLA and I came in as a biochemistry major thinking that I wanted to be a doctor. I didn't have the support that I needed when I got here to LA. Really almost failed out right at the beginning. I felt lonely, I felt unsupported, and just didn't really know where to turn. In fact, I ended up changing my major at that point, thinking that I wasn't able to
Hmm.
accomplish um, being a doctor.
Hey, thank you for joining us for another episode of the Falling for Learning podcast. Please hit the subscribe button. We're here for you, and you want to stick with this channel if you have teens and tweens, or you're a caregiver, right? You might be a parent, you might be a caregiver, and you want to know what to do to keep them on track for learning and to stay on track for success. Hit the subscribe button.
Hi, we have a special guest who is Bootsie Battle-Holt. She is a teacher leader in public education. She has a proven record for positive outcomes for diverse students through leadership and engagement. She was an LAUSD and LA County Teacher of the Year. She is a National Board Certified Teacher in Mathematics, and she's a grant writer with more than $100,000 awarded. She's a frequent collaborator with on-site, district-wide, local, state, and national education policy initiatives. She's an experienced professional learning leader and a curriculum designer. Her latest role is with the National Board Certified Department, and she'll tell you more about that role.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for having me on today. Um, yeah, so I'm really excited about this new role, actually. National Board Certification is one of the highest levels of achievement that a teacher can reach in their career. And unlike the state certifications that most teachers get, National Board really does represent accomplished teachers. For example, 6 out of the 50 state teachers of the year this year are National Board certified teachers, and there's a reason for that. So I'm really excited to be working with National Board for Teaching Standards now, and I'm working on a specific project actually that is to support more teachers of color, specifically Black teachers, in becoming National Board certified in the state of California. This is really exciting for me because, as with other parts of education, Black teachers are deeply underrepresented, right? And we know that we have additional challenges in the teaching profession beyond just the regular challenges of how hard it is to be a teacher. So I'm
Mhm.
really excited in supporting Black teachers throughout the state in achieving their national board certification, not only because it's a great honor, but also because it really helps one grow in their career. And as a lifelong educator, we are also lifelong learners. And so we're always looking for ways that we can grow.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for being on our show. What I wanted to first start off our interview with was what hooked you as a young child into learning.
Yeah, I mean, so what hooked me into learning is that, I've always enjoyed being a learner. I've always been a really curious person. And so even as a kid, I wanted to know about everything. I think it also was helpful, of course, that my mother was a teacher, right? And so she uh, just sort of infused education in everything we did. In fact, the story that I often tell is that my grandmother was a teacher in urban public schools. She taught in New York City School District. And then my mother was a teacher in urban public schools. She taught in Oakland School District. So as a child, I always said, I am not going to do that because I see how hard it is, right? And so I actually took a different career path out of college, but it wasn't until my own daughter was in kindergarten and I was volunteering in the classroom and I realized how much fun and how impactful it was to work with kids. And so I decided to go back and become a teacher at that point. So, I mean, I think for myself, I was hooked on learning really early from the influences in my life, and also just that culture of education. But in terms of being a teacher, I really didn't realize how fulfilling it was to help others in that learning process until I had kids of my own.
Wow, third generation teacher.
Yeah. In urban schools, I like to put that there because that's a different, that's a different bag than just any school. Is when you're working in an urban school district, there are so many other pieces of it that come
Mm,
into play other than just maybe working in, suburban districts or
yes,
even rural districts. They have their own flavor, their own challenges, right? But
right.
urban districts really have uh, things that are different than other kinds of places to work.
Okay. So you said you took a different path. You're trying to run away from your calling. No. So
I
tell us
didn't really think I'd be good at it. I was like, I'm not a patient person. I don't know, I just didn't think I would be good at it. So
Mhm.
I didn't realize that it was even something that I could excel at until later. So yeah, there are a
Okay.
couple of different reasons.
So tell us a little bit about that alternative path you took in education. I mean, or your journey, your development and your career in your education.
Prior to being a
Teaching, yes.
teacher.
Mhm.
Yeah. So actually, it was a different career path. Being in LA, we have so much of the production industry open to us. And so I actually went to work for a producer for a production company for several years out of college and worked in producing television commercials. And so um, another reason that I realized like the power and the impact of teaching was
Mhm.
that, I was working on commercials like Burger King and Coke and cars. And I was like, we're selling a bunch of stuff to people that really doesn't enrich their lives. And so when I, got turned on to teaching, I was like, this is something that actually makes an impact with people. Right. And I think being a young mother, that's something that just is so, poignant at that time in your life, where you're like, we really have opportunities to make change. And selling fast food to people is not the best way to do that. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. So basically what college did you go to and what major did you have when you were in
Yeah.
college?
Yeah. So another interesting story about my college and my major is that so I grew up in Berkeley, California. And so a lot of students in my school um, were, sons and daughters of professors at Cal. And a lot of people applied to Cal, which I did because it seemed like the natural thing to do. But I also applied to UCLA because at 17, 18, you want to get away, right?
Yes.
And LA seemed really really fancy to me at that time. So I got into UCLA, and looking back, I think one of the reasons I got in is because I applied in a STEM major.
Okay.
So I came in as a biochemistry major, thinking that I wanted to be a doctor. In fact, specifically, it was funny. I can remember being a kid and people would say, "What do you want to do?" And I'd say, "I want to be a genetic engineer." And they'd be like, "What is that?" Because like that whole idea was just brand new. I don't know where I got turned on to it, but I'd heard
Okay.
about it and thought it was really exciting, right? So I wanted to follow
Hmm.
medicine and specifically to work in like genetic research, which is a crazy dream for a 17-year-old, but that's where I was at the time. So I got to UCLA, and actually, this is really some like part of my story that shifts a lot because I didn't have the support that I needed when I got here to LA.
Okay.
I was, um, sort of lost at this giant school.
Mm,
The connections I was trying to make weren't really clicking. Um, I was in giant lecture halls with teachers, many of whom were amazing researchers, but not necessarily great educators, right?
mm,
And
yeah.
so couldn't really follow what they were trying to do, and um, really almost failed out right at the beginning. I mean, it
Okay.
was just not a great experience for me. I felt lonely. I felt unsupported, and just didn't really know where to turn. And also, I wasn't guided in like, well, maybe you should take like in your first year there, maybe you should take one hard class and a couple of like easier
Mm-hmm.
prerequisite. Like I wasn't
Yes.
getting that kind of guidance that I needed, So specifically like in my second, maybe third quarter at UCLA, I was taking organic chemistry and differential equations in mathematics at the same time.
Mm.
And it was impossible for me at that time for so many reasons,
Yeah.
and and I just lost really a lot of my confidence as a learner. In fact, I ended up changing my major at that point, thinking that I wasn't able to
Mm-hmm.
accomplish um, being a doctor, or, tackling those classes that seemed so impossible to me at the time. So I actually changed my major to history of all things
Okay.
because I'd taken a couple of history classes with a professor who was awesome, and just I felt like, oh my gosh, I want to learn about like the story of this world, the story of like how we got to where we are. And
Mm-hmm.
that just seemed really fascinating to me. Um, when I think back and people go, well, history and math are so different. And I always say, you know, the thread that binds them is like making connections, right? When you're thinking about history, you're thinking about how this is connected to that, is connected to that, right? Sort of
Yes.
sorting out these connections. And the same thing with math when you're looking at patterns, right? Like a lot of the basis of math is like figuring out what pattern you're following in order
Mm-hmm.
to solve a problem, right? So I think that there is a connection there, even though a lot of people don't see it. But so fast forwarding in my
Yes.
history class, in some of my history classes, I met this producer. It was just crazy. He had gone to film school and got a job before he finished UCLA. And when he came back, he didn't need to get a film major because he was already, you know, somebody
Yeah.
big in film. He just wanted to come and get a degree, and he liked history too. We met in a history class, and I ended up working for him for several years after college. Um, and then when I went into teaching, I got a multiple subject credential to teach, elementary school, because that's, as I said, I was volunteering in my daughter's classroom. That's what I liked. I thought, oh, these little kids are great. I'll work with little kids. Shortly after um, beginning my teaching career, a couple years in, they started laying off everyone.
Mm.
We had that
Okay.
glut of teachers where there were like so many people. And I remember everyone was scrambling for jobs. And lo and behold, someone said, you have a math credential. You qualify for a math credential because of all that math that you took in college.
Yes.
I said, okay, well, let's do that. And
They always need math teachers. Yeah.
always need math teachers. And I had taken all of that math early on in college because that's, was that early on career path. And so it actually panned out for me. It's crazy how things loop back around, in your life. But so I ended up teaching math at the middle school level and stuck with that just for many, many years. And that really became my identity, was as a secondary math teacher.
Wow.
Yeah.
So going back to your kids, like what did you do for them to help them get hooked into learning as kids?
Yeah. So again, I mean, as I said, I think I had really good role models, right? Being the child of an educator who always played games and things with me. So, and even though my mom was the teacher, my father was a gardener. He had a degree in botany, actually, but he worked as a gardener for the city of Berkeley.
Hmm.
Um, and he loved games, and my mom loved games. My mom loved word games. We'd play Scrabble, we would do word searches, we'd do all kinds of stuff like that. And my dad loved playing cards. So we learned every kind of card game there was, and strategy, and figuring out how to play all kinds of things. And I think that that was really key to like me learning how to make learning fun.
Okay.
And when my kids were little, we did a lot of the same things. I mean, I remember for Christmas, I would always search for like logic games for kids at their level.
Yeah.
There was like the ones that were like, can you get the bus out of the traffic jam? And
Hmm.
can you, um, also, I mean, in addition to the learning, of that piece, I think there's also a lot of lessons learned about taking turns, about being
Mhm.
gracious, you
Yes.
know. There's just a lot, like games are a way.
All over the United States, 75% of children don't know how to write well. Add that to the fact that so many people out there are trying to silence the voices of those who have been oppressed and trying to prevent them from telling their story. Who's going to tell your story? If your child doesn't know how to write well, I have two books to address this issue: The Rewrite Method and the Rewrite Method Workbook, written to make sure that parents know what to do, that educators know what to do to get their children to write better, and just not write better, but love to write. Make sure that your next generation could tell their story and they won't be silenced. Go to fallingforlearning.com today to purchase your set.
And when I say games, I mean like those interactive, really interpersonal games, not
Yeah.
necessarily like a game where you're just playing by yourself, right?
Hmm.
But those games, um, built bonds, built a lot of trust between my
Yeah.
kids and myself, and then also life skills and learning skills.
Yeah. It's part of the reason why I wanted to talk to you because I went to your house for Christmas Eve and we were putting these puzzles together. And I actually didn't even want to do it with other people at first. They came and they were doing it. I mean, I wasn't going to push anyone away, but I wasn't really open, like,
Mhm.
not initially. But getting into it, we put the whole thing together and we just like stuck with it. We laughed a lot. It was a lot of collaboration. And you were saying that's how one of the ways you got your children hooked into learning. And why don't you tell us what your kids are doing now?
Yeah. So my daughter actually just moved back home after about 7 years in Scotland. She went to the University of Edinburgh, where she got uh, her degree and also a master's in a dual major of classics and linguistics. So
Wow.
basically, she was studying both ancient and modern language.
Hmm.
Um, and then after that, she worked for a couple years in finance, of all things, which is like, I don't know how that happened, but she's a smart kid. And so she got hired for that. And then she recently decided to move back home, mainly because she has always had like a passion for film. She's like an amazing artist
Mm.
and, loves visual art of all kinds. She's a great painter and, you know, just artist of all kinds. And she's loved film for years. She's made student films in the past and all this. And she said, you know what? I'm at a point in my life where if I want to do film, I'm going to come back to LA and I'm just going to try, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
she's been hitting the pavement hard in that industry. She's had a couple of little production jobs so far, and she's thriving. She's just is so happy to be back and be
Wonderful.
doing what she wants to be doing. And then my little one, who's not so little anymore, he just turned 22 a few weeks ago, is graduating from Kenyon College in Ohio. It is a amazing private college where, many writers and presidents and all these people went. I'd never even heard of it until he applied. He found out and he was like, "Oh, this great school." And I'm like, what is that?" Right? But it has turned out to be a really incredible experience for him. He's graduating in a couple of weeks with a double major in math and physics.
Wow.
And he is, looking for a position right now. He's doing a lot of networking. Um, just I'm so impressed with the way that he's willing to just make connections with people and call people and talk about like their careers and find out exactly what it is that he wants to do,
Hmm.
and find just the exact right position for him. So, yeah, I'm really proud of both of my kiddos at this point. It has not been easy. over the last number of years since I'd say since 2019, we have had a lot of loss.
Mm,
As with the whole world, we, have obviously experienced COVID and all of that, but also we lost my husband. We lost my mom and dad both, who my kids were very close to. Um, and I think, just being able to have that close connection with them that we formed really early on,
yeah.
um, has been able to like get us all through. So we are in a very happy place right now, and we know that our loved ones are happy for us wherever they are.
Yeah. I'm sorry that you had to go through that. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's
Yeah.
really rough. Wow. So what lessons can you impart to the parents that are listening of teens and tweens that are trying to find the right balance with getting their kids on track for learning, make sure they stay on track for success? What are maybe some missteps or something like that you may have taken or you learned that you want to let them know not to do or to watch out for?
Yeah. I think, what's interesting is that I'm, um, maybe obviously, kind of a type A personality. And so I'm a real go-getter. I'm like raising my hand for every opportunity and volunteering here and getting in there and doing all this
Yeah.
stuff. And both of my kids are actually really type B personalities.
Mm,
They are like, my son is just super chill. And even though he's done like a lot of really amazing like performance stuff in his life, like he
yeah.
doesn't seek that. He doesn't seek the spotlight. He kind of, you know, dopily falls into things. Sometimes he's like kind of dopey. He'll fall into something and then he's like
Hmm.
the star of a show, but didn't even really care to do that kind of. But
Yeah.
neither one of them was like the kind of kid who felt like they needed to get an A on everything. They cared a lot more about learning than they did
Yeah.
about the grade, which was
Mhm.
different than sort of the way I felt like I was taught, not necessarily from my parents, but from society. It was always
Okay.
like, you got to get the A. You got to be an A student. You got to be A number one all the time.
Yeah.
My kids never really felt that way about things, and it's really worked out for them because they've been able to enjoy learning. So I think one misstep that I made was trying to impose like um my super like hyper type A vigilance on them when they were like, Mom, I just
Okay.
want to learn this. I just want to find out about something.
Yeah.
And so honoring like that curiosity in the
Yeah.
end was way more important than even though they both ended up at elite colleges and whatnot, um, it wasn't because they had super GPAs. Neither one of them had, over a four, which, everybody's like, my kid's got to have a 4.8 now or whatever.
Yes.
That wasn't my kid, but they had amazing letters of recommendation. They had amazing interviews when they went to talk to people. They
Hmm.
had ways that they displayed what they'd learned and what they'd enjoyed. And so I think that really being a little more chill and following their lead would have made all of our lives a bit easier through middle school and high school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's really important for you to talk about like, the type of schools you put them in and why and how that supported their growth.
Yeah. So yeah, that's such a great question because particularly in this LA landscape and for others, across the country who are in these systems where you're um, competing for spots in schools and all of that,
Hmm.
right? Like it can be so daunting to figure out where to go. And I remember even from preschool, like listening to all the moms saying like, "Oh, you got to get in this preschool, you got to get in that preschool." And I was like, "Oh my God, like how am I going to navigate all this?"
Yeah.
And it turns out that like my kids went to elementary school at the closest school to us up the street, like
Okay.
the local public school.
All right.
Um, and it was great. It was a science magnet school. It wasn't super heavily science, but it was a science magnet school in name, and they had, like a science lab that they went to once a week, and they had a science fair once a year, and so there was
Hmm.
a science sort of part of it. And again, that was just by accident. It was like my local school, and they had the science program. And after that, they went to the middle school where I taught at, which
Okay.
was um, has a reputation of being pretty rough. It's a Title One,
Mm,
fully Title One school. The test scores are not high, but being in the school and knowing that no matter where your kids are in school, they can get a great education if you understand um, what the learning goals are, what's actually happening inside the school. And I think for all parents, even if you're not obviously a teacher at that school, if you really get to know the school well, so
mm-hmm.
if you're there and you know, who are the teachers that all the kids love? Who are the teachers who go the extra mile on taking kids on field trips and making sure kids have access to things and all of that, right? So
Yeah.
being able to navigate the school is really important. So yeah, my kids went to this school that was, um, you know, tough reputation, low test scores, and all of this, and they thrived there. They have great friends who they met there, who they're still friends with.
Mm-hmm.
They got a really solid education. And we were prepared to go to the local high school after that. Someone sort of off the cuff mentioned that there were some different kinds of organizations that help students of color get into some of the local, like independent schools.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I don't know anything about that world. I mean, I was a public school kid. My husband was a public school kid. My parents were like,
Yeah.
I knew nothing about private schools, right? And this person said, no, there's great programs out there. You should really look at it. So I said, okay, I'll make this call and see what they have going on. And it really did change things because this program called ABC, A Better Chance, that's been
Okay.
around for um, like 50 years,
Okay.
is focused on getting students of color into top schools, top private schools in the area. And they're actually nationwide as well. So you can find them in lots of urban um, centers. So ABC, and they make the process easy also by doing it's sort of like doing a common application like you would think in
Oh.
college,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
so normally the process would be you're applying and doing all these applications to all these different schools, but they help you go through all the testing that you need. They have like a special testing session set up for their students, all these things that make it um, more accessible, right? And it really is about access. And so I got to shout out Mr. Murrah. He was my daughter's eighth grade math teacher.
All
And he
right.
still teaches in the district, but he was the one who told me to check out A Better Chance. Um, and so that was the pathway that got my daughter into Harvard Westlake, um, where she had a ton of opportunities. I want to say also, though, we were, as I said, we were prepared to go to the local public high school, and we were
Mm-hmm.
totally fine with that. It actually turns out that we got like a really amazing scholarship package and offer from Harvard Westlake that really made the difference because my daughter was an athlete, and so they were going to pay for like all of her athletic stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and and they just had a lot of opportunities at that school that you just wouldn't get elsewhere. So,
Yeah.
I mean, she got to travel on a filmmaking trip to Cambodia for free,
Wow.
things like that. So, like, we weren't going to get that at our local school, even though I think my kids would have been fine there. So
Yeah.
that's how she ended up there, and then he just followed. So they did go to an elite private high school, um, but I don't think that that was necessarily like the secret sauce of their success, if you
Right.
will.
Right. Right.
It was just another um, sort of leg up along the way.
Yes. Okay. Cool. All right. So, as we're wrapping up, is there any like last bit of information or takeaways you want to leave parents who are really trying to navigate the educational system to make sure their children are on the path to success?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to go back to the part about just being engaged with your kids' school. I know we hear that a lot. To get into the schools. And it's so difficult. I mean, we have so many things going on in our lives, especially in this day and age. I mean, we're trying to make ends meet. We're trying to put dinner on the table. We're trying to, pay our bills, all of that.
Hmm.
And so it is not just an easy thing when people say, oh, go to your kid's school and get involved and all that. I understand it's not easy. I mean, even as a teacher at their schools, we had stuff going on in life that made it difficult to always engage, but I really do think that that makes a difference, right? So
Yeah.
wherever you can find that time, go through your kids' backpacks and see what kind of flyers are in there about things that are happening at the
Yeah.
school. Lots of that stuff gets thrown away, but that's really where you get a chance to make connections with teachers, to make connections with the community, to make connections with, your PTA or your parents' organization or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, when I think back to the parents who I knew who were at the school, even the
Hmm.
ones who had
Yeah.
challenges but found a way, whether it was volunteering on a field trip or helping out in the costume room when the kids were doing a school play
Yeah.
or whatever, right? If you find a way to get in there, I think it makes such a huge difference to how your kids view school and also to how, frankly, how you're treated at the school, right?
Mm.
Because it's easy for a school site to, sort of lose focus of individual kids, but
Yes.
they don't lose focus when the parent is really a part of the community. So I would say
Yes.
get in there wherever you can, however you can. Just make it known that you're, an active parent just as much as you possibly can, even through middle school and high school where it becomes harder.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
where
It really
they,
falls off
yeah,
after that.
yeah,
Stay
They-
involved.
stay involved. Exactly. Yeah,
Thank you so much for joining us, Bootsy. We appreciate you.
thank you.
And if people want to get in contact with you or reach out to you, where should they do?
Um, yeah, I mean, definitely a LinkedIn message is great because I will respond to those. I look at all
Okay.
of my LinkedIn messages. So if
Okay.
you want to go ahead
LinkedIn.
and post that link,
Yes, we
yeah,
will.
feel free to reach out and say hi and I'll say hi back.
All right. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Thank you.
Thanks again for supporting the Falling for Learning podcast. New episodes go live every Saturday at 5 p.m. You can watch us on youtube.com at Falling for Learning or listen on all major podcast platforms such as Apple, Google, Audible, Spotify, and much more. For more resources, visit fallinginlovewithlearning.com. We really appreciate you. Have a wonderful week.